Good evening, everyone. So today's Nishta class, after the Shanti mantra, we will continue from where we left. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavagai Tejasvinavadhetamastu Ma Vidvishavagai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. So last class we had a very elaborate discussion on Shraddha. So as a follow up to that, I would like to point out the 17th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. If you can find some time, studying the 17th chapter of Bhagavad Gita with the traditional Acharya's commentary will be very useful. The 17th chapter is called Shraddha Traya Vibhaga Yoga. So it talks about the three kinds of Shraddha: Sattvic Shraddha, Rajasic Shraddha, Tamasic Shraddha. So on that topic, it will be very useful. If you study along with the commentary, Swami Chinmayananda's commentary is fine, Swami Dayananda's commentary. Any commentary that is in keeping with Adi Shankaracharya's Bhashyam, whatever is in line with the Shankara Advaita Parampara, that commentary would be useful as a additional study to our class. Why Shankaracharya's commentary based? Because that is the drift of our class. So my sampradaya is Shankara Advaita Parampara. So the line of thinking is in line with the Shankara Advaita, with the Shankaracharya's tradition. So I am recommending that. But when it comes to Shraddha, it is all right. If you are already in a Ramanuja Parampara or some other tradition, it is all right to go through that commentary. But please make sure that whatever you study is a traditional commentary translated by a proper student or the main person who is, or a scholar who comes in one of the sampradayas in India. Do not study Western authors. So that is very important. Having said that, there are a few more points that I would like to add concerning the Shraddha as a extra note to a probably to the certain topics that are dealt with in the 17th chapter. I don't want to deal with the 17th chapter as a proper Swadhyaya as a class, because there is already a Bhagavad Gita class going on, and there are enough lectures on the Shastras. So I don't want to add to that. I just add a note, a practical note to it, just like a brief idea. So basically, the chapter talks about Yajnam, Danam, Tapas, and the types of worship, etc., connected with the three temperaments: the Sattvic temperament, the Rajasic temperament, and the Tamasic temperament. Now we may see that in the entire Indian knowledge systems, wherever you go, the three gunas play a very important role. The understanding of three gunas in every context of life happens to be one of the central approaches to problem solving and to attaining our goals and to planning and regulating our life. So all these are generally based on the understanding of the three gunas. And we understand that though all the three gunas are part of nature, it is the sattva guna that is conducive for long lasting happiness and for liberation. At least sattva guna being predominant. So sattva guna being predominant should be the main purpose of whatever sadhana we are doing. Even if the practice that we are doing may not be immediately or apparently sattvic, it could be a tamasic or a rajasic practice. But the point of doing that practice is to eventually lead us to sattva guna. Whatever faculty that we are applying in our sadhana, in our spiritual practice, be it a physical practice or a pranayama related practice or some tapasya sense control practice, austerities like fasting, etc., or some diet restrictions like vratams, or some specific worship rituals, whatever we may do, not all of them are sattvic. That is why I told you to read the 17th chapter. When you read the 17th chapter of Gita, you will understand the categories of deities, the categories of worship, the categories of practices, the categories of diet, and all that, the different attitudes in charity, and all that. So, when we are dealing with esoteric practices like worship of a deity or invocation of mantras and practice of mantras and things like that, even though one we say that okay, I am doing this, but this is tamasic or this is rajasic, I have been given this practice traditionally according to my family, or according to the clan in which I belong, or according to the ashram or somewhere, if where I belong, this is a tamasic practice. So should I give it up or not? All those questions will come. So there one has to take into account one's swadharma. For example, in worship of goddess, Lalitambika is considered sattvic, while Tripura Sundari is considered sattvic, while Kalika is considered, Mother Kali is considered tamasic. Right? Kali, Tara, Baglamukhi, Chinnamasta, all of these are considered tamasic. Similarly, in male deities, Bhairava is considered tamasic, Subramanya is considered sattvic. Lord Shiva has 5 forms. Oh, some are tamasic, some are sattvic, some are rajasic. There are different. In Shaivism, there is a huge. So, in any ism that we go, Shaivism or Vaishnavism, Shaktam, Kaumaram, Ganapatyam, Sauram, whichever we go, in each sampradaya, in each deity worship, that is when in the traditions of worship around every major form of divinity, you have sattvic version, rajasic version, and tamasic version. Generally, worship of Lord Vishnu is considered sattvic. But if you go into Vaishnavism, you have tamasic murtis, rajasic murtis, and sattvic murtis. If you talk to Vaikanasha and Pancharatra people, they will tell you about the different thing. And also, when you see about bija mantras, there are you can add a rajasic bija mantras depending on the prayoga for what you want to use the mantra. All that it will change. So, if a person belongs to a certain tradition and has a certain commitment or an obligation to the tradition of preserving the vidya, for example, you may be born in the family of priests who are devoted to a certain tamasic form of worship. For example, let us say we have these village traditions, tribal traditions, village traditions. You have these Muniswaran and Masani Amman and these kind of things, and certain village devatas are there. So these are all there. And suppose if you are born in a family of priests who are meant to maintain that temple, then there is a commitment to the tradition, there is an obligation there, and it is your job, your dharma to do it. So doing that, so if I have to be a sattvic person, if I become a yogi, if I am, my goal is moksha and all that. So how is it compatible with that? That question may arise. In that case, one has to do that as a obligation, to, as a with the sattvic attitude of performing one's duty and to preserve the tradition and seeing that tamasic upasana as part of the big picture which is God, and aligning our practice and whatever we are doing with the understanding of dharma and having a sattvic attitude towards that. That is, sattvic attitude means driven by duty. I have to do this, this needs to be done, this vidya needs to be preserved, so I am doing this as a as my obligation to the tradition. So that becomes a sattvic attitude. So in that case, even a apparently tamasic practice can become a sattvic practice. Rajasic practice can become a sattvic practice. So the most important thing when it comes to three types of shraddha, the worship, and when it comes to the categories of actions, I will put it like that. When it comes to the categories of actions classified under sattva, rajas, and tamas, the three gunas, the three qualities, the higher importance goes to the attitude with which the action is being done. So the shraddha, the commitment, and the inherent core attitude with which I am performing the action, that gets the predominant importance of having to be sattvic, irrespective of whether the action is sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic. So this is the top priority. Now, some people will say, I may eat meat, but I am thinking of God while I am eating meat, and I am eating this meat as an offering. So this is sattvic or tamasic. The act of eating the meat is tamasic. Okay, you are having a better attitude, you are having a more sattvic oriented attitude while eating it. But that does not make the action of eating meat, so that does not transform the quality of the meat. Meat is tamasic. When it goes into the body, it is going to create a tamasic vritti. And because of your sattvic attitude, it may not affect your line of thinking. It may not affect your buddhi that much. But we have to see who is talking this. If a person is sincerely asking the question, see, I have to eat meat, there is no other way, it is part of our way of life. Suppose, let us say, we are talking about a hunter in some tribal hunter, somebody. If that person comes and says, I have to, this is part of my way of life, so then what can we do? That person has to eat meat. So in that case, if the person is sincerely asking, then in that case we can tell them to focus more on the attitude and not bother about the food. We see such instances in the religions in the Middle East. These religions that came from the Middle East, this Abrahamic religions. There are instances when one master says, it is more important what comes out of your mouth than what goes inside your mouth. That is one very famous statement. But that it has to be. These things have to be understood contextually, because they are living in they are a more desert-oriented culture. And for example, there is a pratishtha. For example, there is a rule in tantra. In tantra shastra, there is a rule. Yakshanu rupa bali. There is a rule. According to the form and the nature of the deity that has been consecrated in a temple or in home, the prana pratishtha we say. So according to the nature of the deity that is consecrated, the offering will be according to that. The offering has to match. According to the nature of the deity, the offering should be. So if the devata is a tamasa swarupa devata, according to the nature of the pratishtha demands bali, then for that murti, for that deity, one has to offer body. One has to offer meat. One has to sacrifice animals or whatever is prescribed according to the thing. You know. So as alcohol, if you go to Kala Bhairava temple in Varanasi, there is a midnight puja where they offer the arati when you do. No, we generally do Karpura arati, right? So in Kala Bhairava temple, they will offer an arati with alcohol. So after the puja, they will give alcohol as prasad. Everybody will get 1 teaspoon of alcohol. Yeah. So Kala Bhairava has to be offered alcohol and meat, whether you like it or not. So the priest is a Brahmana, that person will not eat meat, but when it comes to the offering, what the deity asks has to be given. Similarly, if you go to, there is a Chandi temple, very famous Katak Chandi. I heard that when I had visited that on Swamiji who took us, he told us that they do Bali here. So there are temples where Kamakhya, they do Bali. And for Mahakaleshwar in Ujjain, they do Abhisheka with Smashana Basma, with the ashes from the cremation ground. They they do Abhishekam, or they anoint the Shivalinga with that. There is a certain very special kind of worship. They bring the ashes from the cremation ground after the dead bodies are burned. So these are all there. At the same time, if you go to Ranganatha Swami temple in Srirangam, or we go to Venkateshwara Swami in Tirupati, the worship is completely Sat. But depending on the place, the offerings and everything, Yakshana Rupa Bali, they say. So if one's Ishtadevata is happens to be a tamasic form, how to bring sattva there? In that way, one is the attitude of surrender and attitude of performing one's duty, and bringing an attitude of surrender and devotion, and worshipping for the sake of developing the love of God, instead of doing it like some kind of a magical ritual for getting things done. Instead of that, you have a surrender and a devotional attitude. So that becomes a sattvic attitude in worship. And also to see that form of the Lord as the Supreme Lord, or Ishvara, the Supreme Being from which everything came, in which everything exists, unto which everything goes, dissolves in the end, resolves in the end. That Supreme Being, the Brahman, the Saguna Brahman, or the Ishvara, what we say as Jagat Karanam Brahma, the Supreme Absolute as the cause of this world, we say, God, the Supreme God. So that deity in front of you should be treated as the Supreme Deity. That becomes a sattvic attitude because it is in tune with knowledge. So one of the main things in sattvic Shraddha is, no matter what we do, irrespective of the spiritual, the classification or at the action level, for whatever spiritual practice we do, the attitude being sattvic becomes predominantly important. Now, trying to say that only attitude is important, I can do whatever I want and I will have a sattvic attitude, will not work, because that kind of argument itself comes from tamasic attitude. Because my ego and my preferences are more important, I am trying to abuse this argument in favor of my preferences. So this only one's own self, we can be introspective and be sincere to ourselves. Ask ourselves, what is making me think like this? Why am I thinking like this? Then doing a very sincere introspection, one has to find one by oneself the actual intention or motivation. What is my motivation? Is my motivation sattvic nature, in alignment with knowledge, in alignment with the Shastra, in alignment with the right knowledge that is outside of myself? So when I'm talking about right knowledge, I am talking about an objective standard that is outside my mind, an objective standard of knowledge, standard knowledge based on tradition and the authority of the teacher, tradition, etc., scriptures, etc., that is outside my mind. So that is given to me, that has been existing before me, that will continue after me. So am I making a judgment according to that objective standard? That becomes extremely important. when we are making decisions in our Shraddha, when we are making decisions in our spiritual practice and in our spiritual path, in our progress, when we make crucial decisions, it is always important to look up to an objective standard that is outside of ourselves. That is the whole point of, that is the central importance given in the traditional approach to spirituality versus this new age and all that. The central point is this: looking up to and living up to the standards given, trying to live up to the standards given by an objective body of knowledge that has been handed down traditionally, that is out there, not a product of my own ego and my mind. That is what Sri Adi Shankaracharya points out in Sadhana Panchakam. There is a sentence: Dustarkat suviramyatam Shruti matah tarkah anusandhiyatam. May you conduct your arguments and logical analysis in line with the opinion of the Shruti. Here the Vedanta Shastra. So all the Shata, Shruti, Smriti, Purana, Smritis, Puranas, the composed scriptures are also given by the rishis who are extremely well versed in the Shastra, in the Veda and the Shastra, and trying to give it in a form that can be understood by us and practiced. And that is why a mentor or a guru or an acharya is always recommended, because the acharya will point out, the teacher will point out the shortcomings in our thinking, because we may be carried away by our own comfort zones. So whenever there is a challenging point in the body of knowledge, in our practice, whenever we are studying the scriptures and all that, whenever there is a point that is challenging our very deep conviction, most of us will have a tendency to interpret it according to how I like. We might have a tendency to interpret it according to the way we like or according to the way we prefer. I'll tell you a very simple, very common example, which is a very, very famous mistake in popular spirituality. These are all very important points as a continuation of our discussion about Shraddha. See, there is a very famous line: Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhava. The knowledge, the wisdom is obtained, a wisdom in any kind of a spiritual undertaking is ascertained, the right knowledge is arrived at through Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhava. They say Shruti means what you hear from the traditional scriptures. Yukti is logical thinking, and Anubhava one's own experience. So generally they will say, they will say, it is not enough to listen to someone. One has to logically understand it and clarify it, and it has to agree to one's logic, and one has to prove it by one's own experience. And also, so one's own experience becomes the most important, they will say. This is exactly the opposite of what the traditional approach is. This is a very common misunderstanding. The Shruti Yukti Anubhava, the way they explain in yoga camps and everywhere else, is a complete junk. This is not the way it is. What Shruti Yukti Anubhava is basically, the top priority is given to Shruti. So the highest pramana is Shruti. The Shastra is the highest pramana. So I analyze my experiences, then I use my logic and everything, and then I see what is the Shastra telling. So I try to align my logic according to what the Shruti says, and I analyze my experiences in the light of what the Shruti says, in accordance to the logic that is in keeping with the opinion of the Shruti. I analyze my experiences and live through the experiences and try to make the truth of the Shruti in my experience. So I live the truth that is revealed by the Shastra by understanding and conducting my logic in a way that is in keeping with the line of argument or the opinion of the Shastra, Shruti Mataha, Tarkaha, and then making it my everyday experience. So it is not interpreting everything according to my experience. So that is the exact problem with New Age spirituality, where they are without pramana. The New Age approach is without Shastra pramana, without an objective standard. Everybody says you do what you feel like. It's ultimately what you feel. All that matters is what you feel inside. When you ask yourself deep inside, you see what your heart tells you, what you feel in your soul. So these are the most dangerous ways of teaching, approaches to spirituality. The most dangerous approach to spirituality is listening to your soul and then expecting your soul to teach you. So this is the most dangerous approach. If, this is not even in, not just in Hinduism, even in religions like Christianity. If you go to traditional Christianity, like, not this American nonsense. If you go to this traditional proper Christianity, like who have this, going on for thousands of years, who have proper theology and all that, like Orthodox or Catholic, if you go there, they will have a way of interpreting. They will have a tradition of interpretation. Whether that interpretation is correct or not is another question. So when they are telling their followers, they will say, you should not go by your mystic experiences. You should go by the teaching of the church, they will say. Why they say is because in their language, in their own crude way of saying, they say, it could be the devil that is, if God himself comes to you and talks to you, you have to check it up with the scripture and with the church and with uh, your priest or whoever, monk or whoever you are consulting, whoever is guiding you. You have to check it up with your guide. You cannot go by your own personal experience, because it is the devil who could be talking to you in the guise of God. So it is always the scripture and the church that comes first, they will say. I am sure there might be something similar in Islam, and there will be similar things in Buddhism or Jainism, in any tradition, long standing tradition with proper scholarship and with a proper methodology or whatever. All of them always put they put a big question mark on individual experience. This, they're very skeptical about individual experience. If you go to even if you go to science, the individual experience is secondary. It is always has to conform to an objective standard that is outside of ourselves. It has to conform to a theory. It has to conform to certain standards, experimental standards, rational standards. It has to conform to the deductive method and all this. They have a lot of criteria. The scientific method has so many criteria. So similarly, the philosophical method has so many criteria. So that is why it is important to conduct our spiritual inquiry and our growth, our practices, our yoga according to a proper tradition and according to the teacher who belongs to the tradition, who teaches in accordance with the approach of the tradition. It is important to keep our approach in line with the tradition because of the importance of an objective standard over and above our own personal experience. Our own personal experience is absolutely meaningless. What you can write it like a slogan in your room. If you are a serious sadhaka, you can write it as a slogan in your room. What I feel is meaningless. No, I always keep saying that. What you feel is meaningless. In the sense, not that what you feel is not important. Should not lose the context. In this context, in the context of determining what is right and what is wrong, what is correct and what is not correct, regarding the method and purpose of spirituality, what I feel is not of the prime importance. What I feel is always subservient and secondary to what is the objective standard set by the right method. So the right method and the right body of knowledge or pramana, the Shastra pramana, always comes above, over and above personal experience. And the logical inquiry and the rationality is applied also, that also is applied subservient to the stance taken by the tradition and the scripture. So your logic is conducted under the authority of scripture. That is what is Shruti Mataha Tarka Anusandhiyata. So this is extremely important when we do, and this is what is totally missing in New Age spirituality and in this modern international five-star yoga. And this whatever is the government sponsored, the secular yoga that is going on, all that. Uh, because the problem is on a international politically motivated stage, one cannot say Shastra Pramana. Then you are pitching one Shastra against another thing that claims to be Shastra. You know, Veda and Agama, we say Veda and Agama are our terms in Sanatana Dharma. But in if you come to Chennai, there is a in Mylapore behind Kapalishwara temple. There is a Bible school. There is a school for training Catholic priests. That is called Veda Agama Palli. Veda Agamam Sulhiradu, they will say. That is not Veda Agama. That is their own thing. They are abusing the traditional words from Sanatana Dharma for their own religion. So they are hijacking it. It's called cultural digestion. It's another topic. So in a multicultural, multi-religious, in a syncretistic society, at the government level or at the collective level, one cannot say that. But when it comes to one's personal practice, it is very important to look up to the Shastra and have the objective standard outside of oneself and try to align our thinking and our feelings, interpret our feelings, interpretation of our experience, interpretation of our feelings is to be done in line with the objective standard that is out there, not according to my preferences. So that is the central point. That is the central point of having a teacher according to the sampradaya. And this is why in I think in Bhagavad Gita Bhashyam or Brahmastra Bhashyam, somewhere, a very famous statement of Sri Adi Shankaracharya, he says, Asampradaya vid sarva shastrajnyo api murkavat apekshaniyaha. If a person who is not thinking and teaching in line with the sampradaya, who does not come under a sampradaya, right, under a tradition, he may be extremely well learned, lot of information. In spite of all that, even if he claims to be enlightened, self-appointed Sadguru or enlightened, in spite of that, that person should be rejected like a murkha, like a fool. Murkhavata apekshaniha. This is the word Acharya uses. Asampradaya with murkhavata apekshaniha. So, and you will be extremely surprised. The example given, the traditional example given for this, it will shock you. The same Sri Adi Shankaracharya who praises this person. In some other context, he praises this person as the king of yogis and all that. So in this context, he says this person is not to be followed as Acharya. And the example given, hold your breath, is Lord Buddha. So the traditional Acharyas say this comes under a concept called Pratama Malla Nyaya. It is like if I dismiss the worst case scenario, all other cases are dismissed. The topmost case is dismissed, others stand no chance. So they say if Lord Buddha himself is not to be taken as a teacher, is not to be looked up to as a standard for learning, not to be looked up to for going and learning from. Whose teachings should not be considered as Shastra, whose Lord Buddha himself has to be rejected. as a teacher, then where the others are standing? Others have no chance. That is in order to drive that point, he has mentioned Buddha like that, they say. So we have to this the point here is not to insult Lord Buddha. The point here is to understand the seriousness of this argument, the seriousness of this argument, of the importance of Vaidika Shastra and the Dharma that is based on the Veda. The Astika, Vaidika, Sanatana Sampradaya, the importance of that. And having the outside standard according to the Vedic Sampradaya, according to the teacher who comes under the tradition, who may not be a great scholar, should have at least certain basic understanding of the approach, the traditional approach, and all that. And somebody who can help us to understand the perspective of the Shastra and help us align our thinking and actions and practices according to that objective standard. You know? So that becomes very, very important in Shraddha. So kindly choose wisely where you learn from the source, and always keep an objective standard as a benchmark against which, objective standard against which you benchmark your feelings, your thought processes, your experiences. All that must be analyzed and benchmarked against an objective standard that is outside of you. That standard should be in alignment with the Shastra and with the tradition. Right? So you can choose any of the Vaidika traditions that you have, whatever you have been exposed to. Wherever you have the most natural inclination to, you may choose that. Generally, you will not choose. The tradition will choose you. If you have enough punya, you will be taken into that. So if your inquiry is very sincere, your swadhyaya is very sincere, it will be taken. Last as I mentioned, swadhyaya pratishtaya ishtadevata samprayogaha in Yoga Sutra. So if your swadhyaya is sincere, you will be guided to the right objective teaching standard that is outside of you. Yeah. So this is very important for Shraddha. Looking up to an objective standard that is in line with the tradition, which is in line with the approach of the Veda and Vedanta, in the light of which I interpret my experiences and I conduct my logical thinking. Yeah. So that is the fundamental point that I wanted to say. And one's experience and one's feelings and all that comes as a secondary. They are not the primary guide. They are to be interpreted according to the framework given by the Shastra. So this is the most important aspect of Shraddha. Yeah? That is why, because Sattva Guna is connected with knowledge. Knowledge means that right knowledge, which is it is called pramana, and the right knowledge is obtained through the right means of knowledge. So regarding the spiritual and otherworldly and all the things that are not available for our logical thinking and scientific analysis, regarding all of that, the Veda is the ultimate pramana, and all the other adjuncts that are helping us to understand the vision that is given by the Veda. So that becomes the pramana. It is not about all those little things. The main point is about the nature of the Atma, the nature of your true self. The true nature of myself is a vision that is revealed by the Shastra, and that is the central point of the Vedanta. The whole Veda, it basically takes you to this. So at least for this, we need to have the Veda as the standard. So that becomes a pramana. Otherwise, you become the readiness to submit to the pramana is a characteristic of sattvic buddhi. The intellect that is most predominantly sattvic in nature is always ready to submit itself to right knowledge. It is always ready to surrender itself to right knowledge. For example, there is a argument. Sometimes we can see ourselves. If you have, typical any silly argument, you may say this is right or that is right. person A will say what I am telling is right, person B will say what I am saying is right. So how to find out? They will try to find out through some analysis or some objective standard or whatever verifying. You check it up, and then let us say what person B told happens to be correct. Then if the person A is finding out that the B is going to win the argument, whatever the B is trying to say, whatever the B is saying is going to be proved as right. Somehow he smells that halfway. And then if the person is of a sattvic intellect, he will immediately accept the one's mistake and say, hey, looks like what you are telling is right, and let's see. And then he will instantly surrender to the truth and dismiss one's own conclusion. That is a sattvic approach. A rajasic approach is, you try to sabotage and make yourself loud, and you threaten the other person and try to prove your point. Like they say, whatever bunny that I got, it has only three legs. There is a famous "Na pudicha moyalku moone kaalu," they say. You're trying to hold on to your point and trying to insist that you are right and trying to push your thing. That is an egoistic, rajasic way where you are pushing your agenda. So we can watch ourselves in a simple everyday argument. How is our tendency? Are we trying to prove ourselves, or are we completely available for what is the right knowledge? A sattvic buddhi is always available for the right knowledge and surrenders and puts the right knowledge above one's own conclusion. Right. So always tries to align one's conclusion with the right knowledge. So right knowledge is always above oneself. So that is sattvic buddhi. Rajasic buddhi is I am more important, knowledge or not. Tamasic buddhi is, even more. It's like you don't care about what is knowledge. What I do has to be the knowledge. So you say where I am standing is the line. They say no. So that becomes the tamasic. And the wrong knowledge, you try to push the wrong knowledge as the right knowledge. That is tamasic. So you know that what you are doing is wrong, but then you say history. For example, they say, history is written by the conquerors. They say. So what the most powerful person or the rich person says is right. In a society like that, that is tamasic buddhi. So the tamasic uh, guna, the tamo guna is ruling the faculty of knowledge. So we can see around us in our society now with this understanding. If you look at yourself and if you look around you, you will see where is sattvic buddhi, rajasic buddhi, or tamasic. So cultivating a sattvic buddhi becomes absolutely essential. Only then we will be able to be available to the true knowledge about ourselves, which happens to be Sachidananda. And only then we will be available for real lasting happiness, which is our own inherent nature. So the Shastra becomes more important. When I am ready to put the Shastra above my own conclusions, then I am allowing my buddhi to become more and more sattvic, my approach to become more and more sattvic regarding the most intimate things connected with the things like my self-image, my worldview, my shraddha, and the vision of myself, and regarding my ego structure. All of these most intimate things, I am being objective about it, and I am subjecting them to the rigor of sattva guna, and I am purifying all of them. I am purifying all those patterns of thinking, and I am becoming available for the true knowledge about myself. So that is why sattva guna becomes very important. That is why shastra becomes very important, and that is why allowing my thinking to be in line with shastra, allowing my shraddha to be in line with shastra becomes important part of cultivating a sattvic shraddha. And the sattvic shraddha alone is going to help us to obtain lasting happiness or liberation. So with this, I will conclude my lecture. And if there are any questions, you might ask. Is there any question in the chat? Yeah, no questions yet.
Anybody can unmute and ask the questions.
Yes.
Namaste, Yogeshwarji. I have a question.
Yes, Pranav.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yes, go ahead.
I guess, a small clarification question. You said in your point near the end that Shankaracharya says to even reject Lord Buddha because he doesn't come from a Vedic tradition.
No, he comes from the Vedic tradition. It is about the way Lord Buddha is handled by the people after him. Lord Buddha was a Hindu. He was a Kshatriya, Sanatana Dharma Kshatriya, and he followed the Sankhya system. So the problem is the Buddhist. So when you present Lord Buddha,
Mhm.
all we know about Lord Buddha is only through the Buddhist. Nobody has seen Lord Buddha. So Lord Buddha itself, apparently, there is a saying that says, very famous statement among the Buddhists, that it seems Lord Buddha has himself said, in 200 years after my death, all my teachings will be lost and will be changed. Some 72 schools or something emerged out of it. And then we have some 3, 4 that are still surviving. So when Shankaracharya says asampradaya with, means whatever is attributed as the words of Lord Buddha. So that cannot be the standard. That can be taken and respected and treated in line with what the Veda says. We have to see it in line with that. That's what it means. I told you in the lecture itself, it is not about denigrating Buddha. Yeah, proceed.
Correct, correct. I was just I must have maybe misunderstood.
Yeah. So,
But
yes,
So,
but
so my question is this about the objective standard. The point, though, is about the objective standard, correct? That if it's not in line
ah,
with the Vedic
ah,
objective standard, then it must be rejected or should not be followed. Did I understand it
right.
correctly?
Why?
So,
Because uh,
mhm,
an individual cannot be a standard.
right.
So the difference between the Vedic tradition and personality cult, spiritual personality cult, is generally we have a tendency these days. I am a follower of Buddha. I am a follower of Osho. I am a follower of this guru. I am a follower of that guru, and there is a Sadguru popping up in every neighborhood. So
Yes.
um, so this personality cult is the problem. I am a Sai devotee. I am this devotee, that devotee. It's all great. It's okay to be a devotee or a disciple of some uh, very illustrious person. That's not a problem. Who an
Mhm,
apparently spiritually advanced or apparently even certified enlightened person, no problem. But the point is,
mhm.
the personality cult is not over and above the Shastra. That is the point.
Okay. Yes. Okay. That I
Yeah, that is what
understood.
he is trying to say.
I
That is what he is
understand.
trying to say. You may be
Okay.
a follower and admirer of Lord Buddha. That's absolutely fine, but that does
Mhm.
not let you let that Buddha or whoever you are admiring, that does not make him or her more authoritative or equally authoritative as the Veda. That is the point.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
And the
Okay.
same applies to all our Shankaracharyas. Whoever is Shankaracharya, whatever,
Mhm.
all of them are under the tradition. That is why even in an altar in our house, the Ishvara is kept, Ishvara Shastra, and the Guru's Pitam is always lesser than the uh, the space given to the God, to the deity. So God, Shastra, all that is represented in one. So the Guru is always under that. Only during Guru Purnima, the Guru is kept on an equal platform because he is
Mhm.
treated as equal to God. That is for the sake of uh, emphasizing the importance of the Guru. So what is called as Vyasa Puja, where the Guru becomes assumes that there is that statement Ishvara Guru Atmevi Murti Beda Vibhaga. The same supreme being who is the Ishvara, Guru, and Atma. Like that, it comes in Dakshinamurti Stotra. Based on that philosophy, so usually the Guru is always within the tradition. The Guru never becomes more important than the tradition. That is the beauty of the Vedic tradition. In fact, if you see, that is the beauty
Okay.
of any tradition.
Mhm.
The personality cult is never encouraged in strictly traditional settings. The personality is a great personality. We have a great reverence for the Shankaracharya, but the reverence of the Shankaracharya is because he represents the tradition, not because he is over and above the tradition. That is why they
Okay.
always
So
conduct
the
what is
point
called
was
as point got, point understood.
no, no. Please continue. Sorry, sorry. Please continue.
Yeah, you said something. You got the point?
Yeah, the point is yes, it's about the personality cult,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
not to have a
yeah.
not to
The
focus on
point
one
is to
person.
dismiss personality cult. That is the whole point. No matter how great
Okay.
that master
Yes.
is,
Okay.
the master is always under the tradition and under the Shastra. The master is not equal or above the Shastra. That is the point.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, right. So we have a question here. Namaste. I would like to ask you about sensitivity from the last class. I don't have any doubt what I should practice because my teacher will tell me what to do. Great. However, generally, sensitivity sounds like easy to get hurt or weak mind. Yogi's sensitivity is so high. Yeah, eyeballs. Yeah, okay, that example. Then yogi who practice perfectly can't live in peace in society. Which means for the yogi, the only way is sannyasi. So karma yogi can't get complete chitta shuddhi. And I felt that deep chitta shuddhi without Vedanta make us suffer more in society. Is this right? You cannot get deep chitta shuddhi without Vedanta, first of all, because right knowledge is part of the chitta shuddhi. Why is chitta shuddhi? What is chitta shuddhi? The impurity of the mind is of two types. One is ignorance, another is what do you call as projection. Avarana and vikshepa. Covering of the truth and projecting of the false. Right? These two are there, are aspects of, these are the two sides to the chitta ashuddhi or impurity of the mind. Impurity of the mind is nothing but avarana and vikshepa. So, you cannot have real chitta shuddhi without Vedanta. So, and it doesn't mean sannyasi. Sannyasa here, in the sense, uh, what you're asking is a very important point because cannot live in peace in society. What we can say is what I tried to mean there is a yogi who is cultivating a sattvic mind and a karma yogi who is purifying. It is not just chitta shuddhi. Chitta shuddhi is preceded by bhuta shuddhi, the body, the nadis, the prana, everything, right? So up to until you reach a certain point, one has to protect oneself. It is like a growing sapling, they say, right? So the fence becomes very important. So a person who is in a very committed spiritual lifestyle, where the devotion is to cultivating sattva in all levels, cannot do certain things which are part of the society. That is definitely there. It does not mean that he cannot live in a society. He must live in the society in an intelligent way so that the problems of the society, he is not totally exposed in an unintelligent way to be hurt by the problems of the society. A simple example would be a yogi should not go to a bar. Yeah, it's a problem. For example, if you are a karma yogi, uh, you are part of a business, you are a business leader or something, and some negotiation, something has to happen in a certain bar. Over, it usually happens over drinks, over a dinner party or something like that, where that socialization becomes mandatory to the nature of the job, let us say. Now, these kind of things have to be handled intelligently, and the difficulty experienced by the practitioner of yoga in that bar will definitely be the person cannot enjoy that. So there it becomes an aspect of titiksha. So where it comes to absolutely essential exposure in society, we have to understand that it is an inevitable suffering. So I have to deal with the attitude of titiksha or endurance. And after coming out of that back to my house, I have to purify myself and do some prayaschitta. It is like you go to a house where somebody is dead, So generally, what we do when we are going on the street, there is a dead body or something coming there, we avoid and go in another way. But if it is somebody who is known, you have to go and visit the house for offering your condolences. So what we do, we come home and take a bath, and we don't eat anything until we take a bath. So we have to go to the salon to cut our hair. It is part of life; it has to be done. But when we come home, we don't cut our hair and then go to the restaurant and sit and eat there. We cut our hair, then we come home, take a head shower, change our clothes, and then after that maybe you do some japa or pranayama or something, and then after that you take your food, even if you have to have a glass of water. So these are all some basic disciplines that we have in our culture, where we understand the segregation of different types of energy. So everything is not mixed with everything else. So the same logic applies. So a perfect yogi can live in peace with the society, but he will recognize the pain in certain things that are part of life, which a common man may not recognize as pain. What is pleasure for a common man is recognized as a limitation or a pain for a yogi. So he develops the attitude of vairagya towards that. That is the point. So what is generally the common people go behind as an indulgence, as a pleasure, what people get addicted to, because of the yogi's sensitivity, the yogi is able to see the inherent defect in that experience. So because the yogi is able to see the inherent defect in that experience, the yogi will not be caught in that. The yogi will keep that to the most essential minimum that is required for the purpose of his karma yoga, for the purpose of his dharma anushtanam. According for that, he will keep it, he will relate to that with absolute vairagya, with complete objectivity, and do what needs to be done and not be pulled into it. So that is what here it means, like the yogi's sensitivity. It is a comparable thing. It's like this, somebody is smoking and you are not smoking. If you are a non-smoker, you cannot stand next to the person who is smoking. So 30, 40 years back, it was all very normal for people to smoke in the bus, train, cinema halls, restaurants, everywhere. And the non-smokers had to suffer a lot. So eventually, humankind understood the problems of passive smoking, and then they banned there was a collective will to make sure that the smokers don't smoke anywhere and everywhere, and the non-smoker has more right. Right? And the non-smoker, for example, wants to try smoking. It is going to be an absolute hell. The person will cough and they will not be able to the head will start reeling. You will lose your you will start vomiting. All problems will come when a non-smoker tries to smoke. It takes repeated attempts to desensitize the system to arrive at a point where one becomes a smoker and is able to derive some pleasure from smoking. They arrive at that point after ignoring all the beginning stages, all the symptoms that the body is showing that smoking is injurious to health. Body is telling you, body is rejecting that. In spite of that, we condition our system, we desensitize our lungs and all that. We desensitize our defense mechanism in order to make the body accept the smoking. That's how everybody becomes a smoker. Not a single person is a born smoker. It is after desensitizing the body that they are able to enjoy the smoking. So having gotten addicted to smoking, the person becomes incapable of seeing the pain inherent in the experience of smoking. Right? So we can extend the same logic to everything, every kind of indulgence in our life. So the yogi's sensitivity allows the awareness, allows him the awareness, him or her, it allows the awareness of the inherent defect that is not seen by the normal people because of their excessive rajas or tamas in their mind. They are numb to the inherent pain in the samsara, while the yogi is aware of the pain in the samsara. That facilitates the yogi to have a vairagya. Because there is vairagya, the yogi's mind is more available to knowledge. The yogi's mind is more available for performing the swadharma, and that vairagya is what enables the yogi to have desirelessness towards the results of one action. Vairagya toward the results of one action is the central point of karma yoga. You know, uh, karmanyevadhikaraste mapareshu kadachana. So do not go behind the result. And kripana palahetavaha, the one who is behind the result is of a small minded person. So basically, the central point of karma yoga is not hankering after the results of one's actions, but being devoted to swadharma because that dharma has to be done. That is the nishkamya karma yoga, it is called. So one this sensitivity what I talked about actually helps the karma yogi to be a better karma yogi, because the sensitivity means vairagya. I hope I answered your question. So with that, we will conclude our class. Om Purnamatah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamuduchyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.